Welcome, HPE learners. Today we're going to talk about what I mean when I say prolonged engagement. When I say prolonged engagement, I don't mean what your friends might be experiencing, having to delay their wedding for months or years at a time right now due to the global pandemic. When I say prolonged engagement, I'm talking about a qualitative research method technique utilized for increasing credibility in research findings. It is considered necessary for observational research to reduce observer effects. Unlike short, single interactions in a survey or just a few hours of observation, prolonged engagement allows researchers to really immerse themselves in the culture, site, or context of their study population for a long period of time to gain a better understanding of behavior, value, and social relationships in that context. When I say prolonged engagement, I mean it takes time and patience. It works under the assumption that spending more time on data collection in a particular setting will provide time for trust to be established with the participants. The hope is that if they spend more time, the researchers will get better, richer data. As they're embedded into the study context, researchers can overcome distortions that their presence causes. Basically, when I say prolonged engagement, I mean that we're talking about a technique that builds trust. The researcher blends in, and the respondents feel comfortable disclosing information that they wouldn't otherwise. We assume as more is revealed, the data becomes more valid. It's a researcher-focused approach, and it can only be used with observational studies. As the researcher is there for a longer time, they will observe the variations that time and different outside forces bring. However, there's no prescribed time for qualitative inquiry to last, so it could be days, months, or even years at a time. Usually the researcher can estimate the proper length of time once they've spent some time at the site. For example, if a researcher wanted to understand the phenomena of college basketball games, it would require being present for at least a full season of basketball at a university. But it may also require presence of the preseason and off-season, maybe some tailgating, and looking around at the campus to see how the students interact. A researcher who simply showed up for the biggest rivalry game of the year would have little understanding of the nuances, the school and team histories, player backgrounds, student engagement, and the larger context of what they were witnessing. If a researcher can be present in the setting of the university long enough to see the range of things to be expected in such a place, meaning not just at the rivalry game, then the results produced will be a lot more credible. In our work in healthcare, we might see this prolonged engagement utilized for observations about medical resident attitudes and behaviors. On the first day, residents would be on their best behavior or nervous about an observer. They won't open up about duty hours, patient load, or even personal issues that affect their patient interactions. After a month or two, or even more, of being with the researcher, however, the residents might be more comfortable disclosing their worries, their complaints, gaps about the knowledge, and problems with the system to the researcher. This method of getting the researcher in is considered necessary for unstructured interviews in an observational study. The researcher who has been working for this prolonged time can look at the overlaps in different resident accounts for their experience. We would assume that the reporting of findings coming from this researcher who's been engaged would be a lot more trustworthy than a stranger who came in to interview the residents for an hour just once. So overall, basically when I'm saying prolonged engagement, I mean that we're spending extended time in the place of research. We're using a strategy that builds trust with participants, and it ensures rigor and produces rich data in observational studies.
created using Powtoon.